Welcome to Careers and Coffee Talk. I'm your host, Laura. Today's guest is arguably one of my favorite people, and not just because she's wildly impressive, but because she's also incredibly grounded, generous, and real. Dr. Natalie Enclade is the executive director of BuildStrong America, where she's leading efforts to build a more disaster resilient nation. Before that, she ran the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Financial Wellbeing Program. She's also served as FEMA's director of individual and community preparedness, all roles where she's helped empower people and communities to prepare for and bounce back from disasters. Natalie's advised Congress, shaped landmark legislation, and brought deep policy expertise to some of the nation's most pressing emergency management and homeland security issues. I don't know how she manages to do it all, but truly, somehow she does. Beyond her resume, Natalie is one of the smartest, kindest, funniest, and most down-to-earth people I know. I'm really lucky to call her a dear friend, and I can't wait for you to hear more about her too. Let's get into it. Natalie,
Laura,
I'm so excited to have you. This is such a treat for me.
I am so pumped up.
So, full disclosure for our audience, two things. One, you are one of my real life besties. We don't get to spend nearly enough time together. So, selfishly, this is why I wanted to do this. But also, and I tell you this all the time, you're brilliant.
Mm,
And so my goal here is to leave I'm going to soak up all your awesomeness so I can leave here like a little bit smarter. Maybe our audience will leave just like a teensy bit smarter after hearing your story.
I love it. I think my favorite thing was when I was ranting about something, and then you just stared at me and you're like, "You're really smart."
You're just so smart. And I think you thought I was insulting you, but I really wasn't. All right, you got your coffee? I see it.
Got my
I should
coffee.
know I should know your coffee order. Oh, I love this mug. Oh, I remember this mug. Prep
Yes,
yourself. It's very important.
it's
We're going
very
to talk
important.
about it.
We are going to talk about it.
All right. And I should know your coffee order. I really should. We've gotten coffee enough. Blonde roast?
Blonde roast,
Okay.
black.
Black. Has that evolved? Were you always a coffee drinker?
I have always been a coffee drinker.
Okay.
Um, but I used to take it with cream, sugar, all the things. But
Hmm.
similar to your first guest on the podcast, I had a child, and then I needed it straight into my veins to survive.
Yes. Yeah. Motherhood will do that to you for sure. I want to start with your villain origin story.
All right.
I'm just kidding. I want to take it back to young Natalie. You're from Louisiana.
I'm from 30 miles north of New Orleans, from
Okay.
Covington, Louisiana, actually above sea level, but we were still impacted by storms. So,
Yes. So, yeah, been through a hurricane or two, right? What are
you.
some of your earliest memories of hurricanes and other disasters and how your family and your community prepared for them? Like looking back, do you think that those moments planted seeds for your path eventually in emergency management?
Absolutely. So I would say that my family, I always joke that my family was the least prepared family and the riskiest area ever. We did not grow up. We did not have go bags or
Mm,
hurricane kits or just anything. So, and that was typical. Like most families in Louisiana, specifically in my area in South Louisiana, um, we lived under the belief, oh, cool, there's a hurricane coming, but it's going to turn. We're fine.
right.
And most storms did. But when they didn't, we'd find ourselves last second, like right before the hurricane curfew of do not leave your house, at the grocery store. And
Yikes.
this is such a memory for me because it was so often. But we would always be scrambling for like the last loaf of bunny bread, whatever canned foods were there. And for some reason, we would always have like a bag of Hershey Kisses. And I distinctly remember this was my favorite. We were lucky; we had a bunch of canned foods one time, but we had no can like a hand crank can
Oh,
opener.
right. Yeah.
All we had was the electric one. Um, but the power was out. So that was not exactly helpful.
Right.
But we weren't thinking like, oh, the power's going to go out. You don't have a can opener.
Hmm.
But to this day, I refuse to buy an electric can opener. I don't even know if they make them anymore. Do they make them?
An electric, like, no,
Yeah,
I don't think I see them. I see like the battery powered ones, but
right, right.
yeah,
Well, now they're
not
gonna have like an AI robot that's
right,
just
of course. It'll
like,
just zap it open or something.
right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Growing up, the storm, like, okay, well, that storm's going to turn. That's not really exactly resilience.
Yeah.
But it was normal. It was normal for us. It was normal for a lot
Hmm.
of people in my neighborhood, and in my area. I wish I could say it was just my family, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so today I carry that perspective with me whenever I do anything, specifically
Yeah.
crafting preparedness messages. Um, Now, as a parent, I have this much deeper appreciation for my parents, who are balancing four kids, full-time jobs, and just the general chaos of like everyday life,
Hmm.
especially. I mean, you know me, imagine four of us. Um, so stocking up for a storm, not really, didn't really hit high on their
Hmm.
list, very low on their priority list. And even if they did prep, um, probably before I was born, I done it before. Um, they probably did in the beginning, and then my siblings raided the kits before the storm even hit. And so
Hmm.
that's pointless and worthless. And so that really shapes like what are we telling people to do? Let's be realistic. The truth is, we can't expect people to invest time and resources preparing for the what
Yeah.
um, if they're just trying to survive the mental load of the day. And for me, it's like I've got way too much going on. I need to decode whether or not my kid's actually talking about a real emergency or if he's just talking about a skibbity toilet. So
Fair.
there's just a lot going. Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a lot of skibbity toilet talk going on. Yeah.
there is indeed.
Yeah, I
Um,
think helping people figure out like what is realistic because when you're just trying to survive the day to day, you're not thinking ahead for the what if or, what could happen. That makes
right,
sense.
right. Yeah.
Well, I want to jump ahead a little bit. I laugh every time I say this out loud. You've referred to your PhD journey as going to doctor school, which is just it's such a Natalie way to describe something that's, of course, brilliant. And what drove you to pursue that level of education? And then how did your studies there help shape your thinking around policy and resilience?
All right. Well, start with the dinosaurs. Going
Yes.
with the dinosaurs. So
Okay.
believe it or not, I grew up thinking I was going to be a doctor, like a real one, not
Medical
this.
doctor. Yes.
Right. In high so in high school we had these academic tracks that you could choose medical,
Oh, cool.
engineering, insert whatever
Whatever.
here.
Hmm.
And then all of your classes were kind of directed in that
Okay.
that route. So I chose the medical one because I'm going to be a doctor. So even like our English classes included medical
Oh,
terminology.
wow.
And it was cool. Everything was great. Until the day we had to bathe mannequins.
Mannequins?
Now I want you to picture this: a room full of teenagers trying to take that serious.
What could go
And
wrong?
so
What could possibly go wrong?
you might expect, it was, we'll go with the word immature. Um, but it was really my first moment of clarity that maybe medicine was not my calling after all.
Sure.
So then I was like, okay, well, what else could I do? Law and politics seem cool. Let's do that. So when I went into college, I pivoted from pretending like I was going to go to medical school um, into political science. Fully convinced I'm going to law school. And then the LSAT was like, no, you're not. You're not doing that. So the people led me into my master's program. Um, I was working full time as a paralegal. I was commuting 2 hours at night. I was
Oof.
commuting home 2 hours at night. Um, but it's just what I had to do. So I was doing it. And the political classes in the master's program were during the day, but the public administration classes were at night.
Oh gosh.
I had to transfer again if I was going to survive and pay bills.
Hmm.
So I switched over to public administration. And it was truly serendipity because policy was a lot more interesting and enjoyable to me than
Yeah.
political science. No offense if my former political science professors, you were super great. But then came August of 2005. Uh, I will never forget watching the roof of the Superdome fly off. And that I grew up like we would drive past this building,
Hmm.
we'd drive past the dome, we'd go to games, Tulane games, Saints games, you name it, everything. That building was indestructible. Like
Yeah.
nothing is going to happen to that building. So seeing that roof like fly off, that changed everything for me.
Mm.
I immediately did not care about going to law school ever again. And then from from there, I shaped every academic choice towards emergency management and resilience.
Yeah.
And at that time, I'm dating myself, but there were no emergency management programs out there.
Hmm.
No master, certainly no PhDs. Um, and so I kind of forced my policy degree into an emergency management focus. It was about emergency management or resilience. Um, but if there's one constant throughout this entire insane journey, I've always been able to laugh about how I got there.
Yeah.
When I finished my master's, some told me that I could not get a PhD, that I would never get a PhD. Um, and you know me, Laura.
I was just
Um,
gonna say, someone challenged you? Okay.
I can't do something because that is the easiest way to get me to do it, which was cool going to doctor school. But every time I like have to pay my student loans, I'm like, ugh, that was a dub. I'm too stubborn for this. But um, academia really takes themselves very seriously.
Hmm.
And so early in my PhD school journey, I actually almost got kicked out of the program because some of the faculty, you know who you are, thought that I wasn't taking it seriously enough. Probably because I called it doctor school.
That could be
Maybe,
it. I don't know.
yeah, who knows? But I always approached my studies and work with humor.
Yeah.
Um, but also I was very shy. Like I did not
Mm.
say a word in these seminars. Um, but using that humor and being so shy and humble, I guess,
Yeah.
it was really misread as a lack of commitment. Despite the driving 2 hours to and 2 hours from,
Right.
uh, they did not think that I was committed. And that really taught me a lot. It showed me that while academia needs the rigor and focus, really needs to also focus on humanity. Like
Mhm.
humor became a way for me to break down these complicated ideas and connect with others. And being afraid to speak in class and recognizing that I don't understand everything, and it's kept me open to learning and growing. Um, yeah, so rather than letting that experience turn me into someone like overly serious, I really
Mm.
embrace that style. And I feel like now I come across as accessible. And I do teach now, and I teach graduate students.
Yep.
Um, so especially when I teach, I think it's crucial to make those complex topics more approachable and meaningful. So yeah, I'm glad I had the experience, but I'm also glad it didn't change me, and I doubled down.
Yeah. No, I mean, likewise. It's actually one of my favorite things about you is just the way that the reason I think you're so smart, one, because you are, but also because you can make these really big, seemingly very complicated ideas like, community resilience feel just so accessible. It's funny you mentioned taking the LSATs or not taking the LSATs because you're basically the L Woods of emergency management, you're comfortable using resilience jargon in everyday life. But how do you think we get more people to care about resilience and being prepared before a disaster strikes? Kind of the antithesis of the way that, you grew up.
Yeah. What, like it's hard?
What, like it's hard?
Um, So one of the things that, especially coming from my background as like
Yeah.
a child being completely unprepared and anxious,
Right.
um, I've always prioritized resilience is such an abstract concept, and you
hmm
really need to get down to that human level and make it
Yeah.
feel more human. Too often, people in this space are talking in these technical terms. And I'm saying this, and I know that if the president of BuildStrong is watching this, he's probably laughing because he's like, Natalie in the weeds Enclade is talking about not being technical terms. But too often it's very technical, feels very disconnected from people's everyday lives. Um, Resilience is not just about infrastructure or planning documents. Super
Right.
important, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it's really about how people survive and then recover from that in the same or a better way. Um, and so I've found that using plain language and that humor and real life examples are really what we're going to get people to move that needle and help them get it. I have found um, relating it to being a parent is
Mm.
really helpful because I mean, I'll sit through a disaster all day and just deal with it, but I'm surely not going to sit
Yeah.
through disaster and listen to my son complain that he only has one loaf of bunny bread. Um, but I also want him safe.
Yeah.
So have to get down to that level. And so whether it's like a mom figuring out how to prep between soccer practice and bedtime, or a local leader these limited resources to protect their community. Um, we often hear this quote from the NIBS mitigation save study that for every $1 we spend on mitigation, we save up to 16, depending on the metric, like the building
hmm
code or infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. But that same study also says we can avoid $4.5 billion in property losses annually. Cool. I don't have $4.5 billion. So that is so abstract to me. Like, sounds
hmm
great,
I
but it
wish I
doesn't
did.
great. Sounds great. I would love to say $4.5
The
billion.
production on this would be so much better if we did.
We have the AI robots opening the can. But,
Exactly.
but that means nothing to me. Like,
hmm
but what we rarely hear from that study is the life savings from it.
Yeah.
That implementing model building codes saves 600 deaths. It also 1 million non-fatal injuries in the US. And as a mom, a sister, an aunt, a friend, that life saving is really more important to me than the dollar savings. I have to pay my taxes anyway. So you can save it all you want, but the life saving is really more important and focus on what they care about. And so we should be able to explain resilience and mitigation strategies and the importance of them the same way we would explain why you shouldn't wash your hair the same day that you get a perm. Like resilience shouldn't feel exclusive or
Yeah.
intimidating, and I think often it does. And so we need to talk about it in a way that people can own it and
hmm
understand. So, and that's how you build a cultural preparedness.
That's
It's easy.
exactly right. Yeah.
Easy to do.
By the way, anybody who hasn't seen the movie Legally Blonde is probably confused at all of our little side references here. So highly recommend it. If anyone hasn't seen it already, you'll understand half of this conversation a little bit better. You mentioned being a mom. And our boys are the same age and they're basically besties themselves. Yours is so you. How has becoming a mom shaped the way that you approach your work? Like, do you feel that added sense of urgency to build a safer, stronger world?
I absolutely do. We've we've built the same way for years and years. It's the same cycle: build, destroy, rebuild, in the same way. And we can't keep doing that. We have this whole new future, this whole new generation coming up,
hmm
and they need a more resilient nation. And I mentioned before that I'm not going to be able to survive a disaster with my son with just one loaf of bread. Like I can barely make it through a weekend, a blue sky week him if the internet goes out. It's brutal. So Yeah. So he really reminds me every day why this work matters.
Hmm.
But more importantly, like why it's crucial to get messaging right.
Mm.
Um, he often unintentionally makes the best case for why resilience and communication um, need to evolve. Like he's always on a rant about something. Uh, just last week, he stormed into my office, and this happens often, like if the Wi-Fi goes out or something. But this time he was mad at the emergency alerts. Um,
Mm.
Usually he's mad because these kick him off of YouTube or whatever streaming thing he's watching.
Interrupt your regularly scheduled
Yeah,
programming. Yes.
yeah. Which side note, I'm very excited that it does that because it used to not.
Right.
But now it does, and that's really, really cool for me, not him. But I was really proud. What he was actually mad about was not that he got kicked off. So he is on this rant, and he is like, "Let me tell you, the first alert interrupted his video with a flood warning, telling him to go to a higher floor. Um, Fair. That's what we're to do. That's what FEMA puts protective actions out for. They're validated. We know flood
Yeah.
high.
And you did have
Um,
flooding in your area.
yes, we
Yeah.
did. Um, but 90 seconds later, and I know it was 90 seconds later because he must have said not even 90 seconds later about 15 times. Um, Another alert kicks him off his video, and this time for a thunderstorm warning, which said to go to the lowest level.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So he loses his mind. He's yelling at me like I'm responsible for the emergency alert. And he's like, but you just told me to go up for flooding. And
I have to
you
go
want
down.
now you want me to go into the flood for a thunderstorm. And he's like, bruh, I'm just gonna stay on the middle floor and take my chances. It's like,
That's a great point though. Like what is one to do in that
right,
situation?
right. And as I'm trying not to laugh at this
Hmm.
very serious conversation,
Sure.
it really summed up the challenge for us as resilience experts and communications experts. Like my 8-year-old, he's highly trained in catching contradictions. He argued with me um, all
Definitely from
day,
his father. Yeah.
definitely from his father.
Yeah.
But sorry, Jay. But imagine how confusing it is if you're in a high stakes emergency and
Hmm.
you don't know what's going on. I need to do these things, and you're just looking for direction.
Right.
We can't expect people to act if we're sending these mixed messages, but and we definitely can't expect them to trust us if we're not thinking clearly about how those messages are received. So now he goes from floor to floor with a weather radio. You would think for preparedness, but being my child, it's not. He's just trying to catch the EAS and a contradiction at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm
It's now
saving.
his mission.
It is his mission. I am saving for therapy and not college, but he reminds me daily that it's not just about technology or systems. It's really
Hmm.
about the communication, that common sense, um, but that credibility.
Hmm.
We can tell people to do stuff all day long, but if we're contradictory or we're sending mixed messages, they're not going to trust us. And sometimes the middle floor is the best option.
Right.
So,
Well, we can laugh about it because it's him and, his rants are very funny. We get to hear about them all the time, but it is a serious issue and eroding trust when you're already competing with like again, we talked about like all the things that people have going on in life. It's like it makes it all the more easier to just put it aside. I don't really know what to do, so I'm just not going to do anything, and that's not good.
right.
So definitely a serious issue that has to be we have to figure out, right? Um, what do you think, just before we move off the topic of motherhood, what do you think that he sees, your son, sees in the work that you do? How do you think, I think this would just be fun to
Yeah.
get into. How
Yeah.
do you think he would describe what would you do? And do you think Skibbity Toilet would be involved in that description?
There's another funny story about this. So one of the days he's like, I'm staying home from school. You're not, go to school. Um, And he comes home and he throws this FEMA
Oh, drop cover, hold on.
drop cover and hold on thing at me. And it's like, I could have just stayed home from school because FEMA came in talking about building codes all day. And so, yeah, he thinks I just talk about building codes all day. He apparently thinks I'm in charge of the emergency alert systems.
Of course.
Um, but he gets it. Like he's very, probably a little overly anxious,
Hmm.
but he does think about how to be prepared for
Yeah.
things. So that's, um, yeah.
What was the quote we used to use? I believe children are 25% of the population, but 100% of our future. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
I always think of the story from Amanda Ripley's book, Unthinkable.
Thinkable. Yes.
Unthinkable, where she talks about the tsunami, right, in
Yeah.
Thailand, and
Yeah.
the little girl that learned at school the signs of, a tsunami coming was able to clear that beach, and there were no fatalities. I think kids are such sponges. They're soaking everything up that, like your son is an expert in building codes, or at least thinks he is, because
Yeah.
he's hearing you, and, that is helping him to be thinking about preparedness in a way that a lot of kids aren't. But I think reaching kids earlier, about this messaging, we learned stop, drop, and roll when we were kids, right? Like all of those
And,
things, and they're thinking about it, and even when we're not, and they can
right.
remind us. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's actually the seatbelt laws, and the
Right.
seatbelt campaign started in the school where they targeted the children,
Hmm.
like seatbelts are the best. And then those kids went home and annoyed their parents.
Right.
And I remember going home annoying my older siblings, and now you can't get in a car anymore.
Oh
It's like,
yeah. I've definitely, I always wear my seatbelt, but I've definitely left the driveway before putting it on, and like start putting it on as I'm moving. And the kids are like, "What? Your buckles? You got to put your buckles on." You're definitely, so yeah. I mean, that's like an example of a really effective campaign, and it starts with kids. When you think of like preparedness at the community level, what does that look like to you? What does that mean to you? And how do we message effectively to get there? Like, what do you think? I don't know if you have all the answers, but what are your thoughts?
I have no answers at all. But I have lots of thoughts.
Yeah,
So I think, like going back to my time at FEMA when
right.
I was director of individual and community preparedness, or ICPD,
Hmm.
um, got to see like a lot of the local programs and how powerful it is at the local level. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned is people want to be prepared,
Yeah.
but it's that way we communicate it, um, can either bring them in or push them out. Like I said, you don't want to make them feel guilty for not doing it.
Yep.
And it's not like this one size fits all checklist.
Sure.
It's really this mindset, it's a behavior, it's a practice that we need to keep doing and practicing, really get that muscle memory.
Yeah.
One of my favorite examples, when I was at ICPD and out on the road checking out the local communities, was the Knoll Already campaign, so the New Orleans
Hmm.
campaign. And it's not just because I'm from the area,
Not biased or anything, right?
not biased. Um, it, it was such a cool thing that they were doing. They're just trying to get the local community engaged. And New
Hmm.
Orleans is such a unique place, constantly having festivals. And so one of the things that they did was launched and adopt a catch basin program. And for everybody who doesn't know what a catch basin is, it's the storm drain. I actually had to look up what to call a catch basin outside of Louisiana because I did not know. Like I've always called it a catch basin. Um, but residents are able to adopt these storm drains in their neighborhoods, and then
Uh-huh.
they take ownership of it, and they name them, they can decorate them, and they're like responsible for keeping them clean, and so
Okay.
that
Like
the
adopt a
water,
road kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they adopting it means that you're committing to keeping it free of debris.
Right.
That debris and trash, you're not pushing it into the catch basin, but you're putting it into a garbage can with a sealed lid. But my favorite thing about it is that they get to name the catch basin.
Jeez. What could
Um,
go wrong here?
right, right. I do love that when you go to name it, it's like this will be public, as if that's not going to like,
Like that will stop anyone, right?
right, that's not going to provoke any. But in classic New Orleans fashion, like the names are my favorite part. Like some of them were like Ace of Basin, and
I love it.
yeah, and Basin on a true story. And so they're really cool. Of course, there's other ones. Keep those off of here. It's a family show, but
Right.
it's a really cool. The locals, the ownership of something, and then they're out there decorating it, and so it's like, why are people doing this? I'm going to look this up, and it's become a huge thing. And then also, what stood out, another thing that they do is they take those validated protective actions from FEMA. That ICPD validates them, they research them. It is a process.
Mm.
Um, and then they take that messaging and then they put it into culturally relevant artwork. And one of my favorite things was calendar that they made, and they would throw it off Mardi Gras floats for everybody. But it was local artists, and they would take the protective actions, and then they would align it with like seasonal risks. So like if it's hurricane
Okay.
season or if it's Mardi Gras season, it's paired with the tips that made sense for New Orleans life. And that kind of shows what preparedness should look like.
Mm.
It's not just awareness. Like awareness is the first step. Like what are my risks? Yes, but it's really about building that identity and action. Like I can see myself in this Mardi Gras, not freezing and wearing gloves and blah blah blah. But for families, it does mean having a plan that
Mm.
work with real lives. Like we can come up with plans all we want, but if it's not reasonable, it's not workable, you're not going to practice them, it's not going to be just that muscle memory, so it's pointless. And then in communities, it really means, like New Orleans is doing, weaving it into the culture and not bolting it on post disaster and then being like, yikes, that was rough.
Yeah.
Next time we should do XYZ. And then next time happens and they're like, wait, weren't we supposed to do XYZ?
Oops.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, my bad. So at the end of the day, like real preparedness really just makes people feel capable. And it's truly local. It's
Hmm.
personal, and when it's done right, it's something that you can be proud of, and not,
Yeah. It's empowering.
yeah, like you're
Yeah.
not a weirdo. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You're now leading efforts through Build Strong America. So what does that look like for you now? Like what are you most I guess excited or hopeful about?
um everything. Um
Everything.
all the things. A lot going on at BuildStrong. And BuildStrong is by far my favorite job ever. Like it is the perfect combination of my entire career, like thrown into one. We're really focusing on the next generation of disaster resilience. And I don't mean that like for the next generation, but I mean like what does the next iteration of resilience look like in the
Mm,
nation, specifically in disaster resilience policy. We have this ability or the opportunity to reshape how we think about resilience, that it's not this siloed issue. You know, when you look at FEMA, it was 400C is resilience, 500C is everything else. Um, it was really hard to walk in between the buildings, especially if you're wearing heels, because it was brick. And so there wasn't this
yes.
like, yeah. And so there wasn't this like discussion happening. So I think now we're working on it to be not a siloed issue and
Hmm.
something that's deeply connected to
Yeah,
national,
as it should be. Yeah.
yeah, and economic stability and housing and most importantly infrastructure. BuildStrong has a really long and strong legacy in this space. Way before I joined, over a decade ago at this point, they were the driving force behind the Disaster Recovery Reform Act,
Mhm.
which we know was the most significant piece of resilience legislation in generations.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, that's where I first met BuildStrong was when I was working for the Senate Homeland Security Governmental Affairs Committee, working on Dura,
Which is when
um,
we first met.
which is when we first met. Um, whew, that was fun. Um, so I got to see how firsthand they brought together this like crazy broad coalition of like industry and emergency managers and fire service and code officials,
Yeah.
name it, to kind of advocate for this forward-thinking policy.
Hmm.
But what struck me then, and what really drives me now, now that I'm at BuildStrong, is that the mission and focus on long-term impact allows us to have this ability to make it a bipartisan national priority,
Yeah.
which has been really cool. And today we're tackling some of these really tough challenges. Dura was passed in 2018.
18. Hmm.
Um, Back in 2016, 2017, we had to make the case for mitigation. Every $1, we save this many. Um,
Hmm.
we're back there. We have to make the case for mitigation again. We're pushing for smarter federal incentives. Um, Another thing that we're doing is shining a light on where mitigation investments are, but primarily are not going.
Yeah.
If you're an individual, specifically in the wildfire space, if you're an individual homeowner, it's great that you do these things to make your home more wildfire prepared. Um, but some homes, you can't do that because the 5 feet extend into your neighbor's yard. And so we really need more transparency about where like mitigation dollars in the communities are going to what are you doing behind me so that I know what I have to do on my own property. Um, and so we're also working really hard to elevate the voices
Mm.
of the federal and the state and local leaders who are the champions for mitigation. A lot of times you don't get, nobody's giving a politician a parade for building a levee wall or a dam or surely
Be an
not building.
idea, should we?
We need to start having these awards. But when post disaster, when you're bringing in all this money, that's what people are seeing. And
Yeah.
so right now we're just at a really pivotal moment, and that's what makes me really excited.
Yeah. I don't want to bring things down, but in a moment, you mentioned this is a really pivotal moment, right? Um, we're in a moment right now where we're seeing things like budget cuts and, the future of FEMA itself is a bit uncertain right now. So what would you like, whether it's policymakers, the general public, what would you want people to understand about like the stakes are high? What do
Yeah,
people need to know?
I think so. I think that the emergency managers and the trade groups in the space do an amazing job telling the story to the politicians, and the policymakers and
Hmm.
so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I think what we're really lacking is getting that story to the constituents. When when I was on the Hill, we would get calls after calls about insert some priority over here, and then we would have the emergency manager call about mitigation. So it's like you have thousands of people calling about they want to park,
Hmm.
and one person calling about we need more money for emergency management or we need fire grants reauthorized. It's
Yeah.
just the fire groups, it's not the constituents. And I think we need to do a better job of getting the individuals and the communities and the constituents to start moving that needle
Yeah.
there. So,
Well, the International Association of Emergency Managers is now doing its first National Emergency Management Awareness campaign next month,
nice.
which we're almost there. We're leading into it. So that I think that's a great opportunity to help, at the grassroots level, just really help people understand what that means, what that looks like, what it looks like to not have that capability or, capacity in your community. All right, lightning round.
Oh boy.
I
Okay.
always make fun of your book choices only because, like you, they're so smart. I think we were on a girls' trip and you were reading Catastrophic Incentives. It's probably dog-eared right on your desk right there.
I mean, this
So
one,
that is the one.
beach read.
Beach read. Yeah, exactly. What is the best book that you've read lately, or what would you recommend to people to better understand, especially to people not in the field? Is that a good one for people who like the lay person to understand?
I would say this is a really good book.
Yeah.
It really explains why we're in the shape we're in today. We're mitigation and resilience. It's just not incentivized in any
Yeah.
way. Um, this one's really good. I also really love Amanda Ripley's Unthinkable.
Yeah, it's a good
The
one.
quote that got me and really brought me back to childhood was the leading cause of death in Katrina was surviving Hurricane Camille. And that's
Hmm.
because, oh, we survived the last one. What
Yeah.
could possibly happen? And it really reminded me of my neighbor. When I moved back to New Orleans after grad school, there was, I should probably look this up because I tell this story all the time, but I never remember what hurricane it was coming. It was a few years after, so it was like 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And she was sitting on her porch. Everybody's like getting ready to evacuate because it's coming. This is the big one. It's not turning, not turning.
Hmm.
So Miss Gail was sitting on her porch, and I was like, "Hey, are you evacuating? Do you need a ride out? Blah blah blah." And she's like, "No, I'm staying." And I was like, "Well, what did you do in Katrina?" And she's like, "Oh, they picked me off my roof by a helicopter." And I was like, "Doesn't really add up."
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know what happened. I mean, she was still there when I got back.
I
But
was really afraid that was going to take a turn
yeah,
itself. Like, oh gosh, Miss
and
Gail,
she
are
lived. Um, but
but
yeah,
it was a huge risk.
it was a huge risk. And I always am like, okay, well, you survived that. You got picked off your roof by
And
a
that didn't, yeah.
helicopter.
Well, I guess you think, right? Like lightning can't strike twice. You'll be okay in the next one because what are the odds? I don't know. I really, I think the psychology behind why people make those decisions are incredibly important,
Yeah,
because that really impacts the messaging and how to make messaging effective is understanding behavior, human behavior behind it.
yeah,
But I'm really glad that she's okay.
yeah. I mean, she's probably about 250 years old now, so
She was okay.
yeah, she's great. She's great.
Well, you said that brings you back to your childhood. If you were to go back now and give little sweet baby angel Natalie one piece of advice about the future, whether it's professional, your professional career, what would that be?
Um, I know I should probably say something
Insightful or
insightful or poetic, like take your failures and make them a learning experience. But honestly, my biggest regret throughout my career is not keeping like a little tiny notebook
Mm,
to write down just the pure insanity of everything, especially the little quotes or little insane anecdotes that it's just unreal, the things that happen in the professional world. Um, I don't regret a lot in my career because I have always learned from like mistakes or failures. But man, as you get older, the memory gets worse. Um, and those off the wall, like, did he seriously just trade a program for a Rice Krispie treat? Or did I make it up that I was only allowed to send up a memo that was no more than one page with 5 bullets, no more than
yes,
5 words of bullet?
I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Are these moments real? Did
It's
I
like the
drink?
baby book of your career.
Yes. Like these are the things you're going to want to remember.
Sure.
Um, and sadly, I did not start this little book until way too late in my career. Um, but this would have made a great
Memoir.
like, oops, I accidentally published this. Um, yeah,
Amazing.
that is my keep a little notebook of
You
quotes.
know, you didn't share this as a lesson, but it's definitely something I'm taking away from the conversation, and that you were afraid or scared or shy or whatever it was in school to speak up and use your voice, or you felt like you didn't have the answers or right things to say. I'm glad that you've overcome that, at least to some extent. You're not afraid to use your voice now because I think you have a way of connecting with people. I think hopefully all five listeners tuning in for this are going to think the same, but you shouldn't be afraid to use your voice, Natalie, because you have a lot of things to share and important things to say. And I'm glad that you came here today to share those things with us. And like I
Well,
said, hopefully everybody leaves a little bit smarter having listened.
well, thank you. I will say that I have gotten banned from Peloton groups for pushing flood insurance. So I think some
But people
people
need to hear this.
need to hear it. But I would think some people just wish I would stop. So thank you for that feedback. I will write that in my little journal.
Keep it in the journal. Start the journal now. Start writing these things down before you forget. Thanks so much for being with me today, and I hope to do it again soon.
All right. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Careers and Coffee Talk. Big thanks to our guest today for pouring out so many great insights. And hey, thanks to you for hanging out with us. If this episode gave you a little jolt of inspiration or made your day a little bit more brewed and balanced, be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming up next. Got a minute? Drop me a 5-star review. It's basically the podcast equivalent of buying me a fancy oat milk latte. Quick disclaimer though, the views expressed in this episode are personal and do not reflect those of any organization. This conversation is not an endorsement of any company, product, or service. It's just real talk over virtual coffee, okay? So until next time, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and keep chasing the career that makes you feel the most alive. Catch you next time.